Stop overthinking and calm your mind. Let me ask you something. How much time have you wasted thinking about things that never happened, replaying the same conversation, imagining the worst-case scenario, debating a decision you should have made last week? Overthinking isn't analysis, it's paralysis, and it's killing your progress. You see, your brain is like a supercomputer, but if you keep feeding it doubt, fear, and anxiety, it freezes. Just like a phone with too many apps open, it crashes, and then nothing gets done. Here's the truth. Clarity comes through action, not through more thinking, not through another list, not by texting 5 people for their opinion. You want peace of mind, take action. You want confidence, make decisions. You want progress, move your feet. Success doesn't come to the person who figures it all out. It comes to the one who gets moving and adjusts along the way. Here's a simple rule: decide fast, fix later. The most successful people aren't always right, but they're rarely stuck. They don't wait for perfect. They trust themselves to course correct, and you can do the same. Start small, close the tabs in your brain, do the one thing in front of you, breathe, move forward. You don't need to see the whole path, just the next step, then the next, because peace of mind, it's not at the end of a thought spiral. It's found in motion, in discipline, and in doing what matters. Now shut off the noise, make the decision, and go. Overthinking is one of the most deceptive traps you can fall into. It wears the mask of productivity. It disguises itself as preparation, analysis, and planning. But make no mistake, it is none of those things. Overthinking is not about getting better answers. It's about delaying action. It's your fear dressed up in logic's clothing, whispering in your ear that maybe you just need a little more time before you act. But the truth, that extra time, is usually just a hiding place. Every time you overthink, you create distance between yourself and the thing you actually want. Whether that's making a decision, starting a project, or solving a problem, overthinking stands in the middle, stalling progress. What's dangerous is how easily it masquerades as being responsible or cautious. You convince yourself you're being thorough when really, you're just afraid of what might happen if you actually do the thing. The mind loves to loop. When you don't take action, your brain goes back to the beginning of the thought and runs through it again, just slightly differently. Maybe with a new angle or a new fear. What if it doesn't work? What if I choose wrong? What if people judge me? But here's the kicker. None of that changes anything. Not your life. Not your results. Not your peace. All you're doing is exhausting your mental energy in a loop that leads nowhere. And while you're stuck in that loop, someone else is out there taking action. They don't have more certainty than you. They don't have more information. What they have is a higher tolerance for risk, for discomfort, and for imperfection. And because of that, they're winning. They're learning in real time while you're theorizing in your head. They're adapting in the real world while you're rehearsing every possible outcome. Here's what makes overthinking so costly. It doesn't just delay action. It destroys momentum. And momentum is the secret ingredient most people overlook. When you have momentum, you don't need perfect plans. You don't need to feel 100% confident. You just need to keep moving, making small adjustments along the way. But overthinking breaks that chain. It keeps you at 0. And going from 0 to 1 is the hardest move to make. Overthinking also increases anxiety. When you sit on a decision too long, your imagination takes over, and your imagination is rarely kind. It invents worst-case scenarios. It expands problems far beyond reality. What could have been solved with one uncomfortable phone call turns into days of dread. What could have been fixed with a 5-minute task becomes a mountain of mental stress. Action shrinks fear, but thought, left unchecked, amplifies it. What's worse is that overthinking trains you to not trust yourself. Every time you delay a decision, you're sending yourself a message. I can't handle this yet. I'm not ready. I don't trust myself to deal with what comes next. That message gets internalized, it grows stronger, and over time it becomes your identity. You go from someone who's just being careful to someone who is always stuck. Not because you don't know what to do, but because you've trained yourself to believe that thinking more is the solution. But let's get brutally honest here. You already know what you need to do most of the time. It's not more clarity you need, it's more courage. The problem isn't a lack of ideas or options. It's the unwillingness to act on them in the face of uncertainty. And the only cure for that is to break the habit of paralysis. Start noticing when you're overthinking. Catch yourself mid-loop. Interrupt the process. Ask yourself, what decision am I avoiding? Or what's the action I'm putting off right now? Then take a step, even if it's small. Especially if it's small. Action is the only thing that breaks the cycle. And once you act, the noise dies down. Your mind calms because your brain knows something is finally happening. You weren't designed to live in your head. You were designed to move, to try, to fail, to adjust, to grow. But you can't do any of that if you stay trapped in thought. Overthinking doesn't protect you from mistakes. It guarantees regret. Because in the end, you won't remember all the things you feared. You'll remember the things you never tried, the opportunities you watched go by while you were thinking it through. So stop feeding the loop, starve it, interrupt it, replace thought with movement. The path forward is always found in doing, not in thinking about doing. Clarity doesn't come from sitting still, analyzing every possibility, or waiting until all the lights turn green. Clarity comes from movement. From doing, from showing up and making contact with reality. It's earned in motion, not found in mental rehearsal. This is where most people get it backward. They think once they are clear, they'll act. Once they know exactly what to do, then they'll do it. But that's not how clarity works. It's not a prerequisite for action. It's a byproduct of it. You can't think your way into certainty. You have to move your way into it. Action brings feedback. Feedback brings clarity. That's how the process works. You try something, you get a result, and now you know more than you did before. You see what works, what doesn't, what needs adjusting. That's where clarity lives, not in your head, not in your journal, not in a list of pros and cons. It lives in the doing. Think about learning to ride a bike. No one ever mastered it by watching YouTube tutorials or listening to someone describe the physics of balance. You learned by getting on, wobbling, falling, and getting back up. Each fall taught you something. Each adjustment brought more stability. That's how clarity is formed, through interaction with reality, not isolation from it. What keeps most people stuck is the belief that they need more certainty before they act. That's fear talking. Fear wants guarantees. Fear wants safety. But growth doesn't happen in guarantees. It happens in the unknown. And the only way to shrink the unknown is to step into it. To break the illusion that clarity lives on the other side of more thinking. Action doesn't just create clarity, it also kills noise. When you're stuck in your head, 100 voices compete for attention. What if I fail? What if this isn't right? What will they think? But when you move, when you do the thing, the voices start to fade. You're no longer tangled in hypotheticals. You're engaged with the real world. And the real world always gives you a clearer signal than your imagination ever will. Clarity also creates energy. Have you noticed how tired you feel after a day of overthinking, mental exhaustion from spinning your wheels? You didn't do much, but you feel drained. That's the cost of inaction. But the second you take even a small step forward, you feel it. The surge, a boost in momentum. It's not because everything is solved. It's because motion reboots your focus and clears the mental fog. Too many people confuse clarity with comfort. They want to be 100% sure so they can avoid making a mistake. But clarity isn't about being perfectly correct, it's about being engaged and responsive. The people who win aren't the ones who make flawless decisions. They're the ones who make decisions quickly, learn from them, and move again. They're not stuck in analysis. They're alive in the game. You can't anticipate every outcome, and you don't need to. You just need to do the next right thing. Not the ultimate answer, not the final strategy, just the next, best step you can take with what you know now. That step will give you information. That information will lead to the next step. And that process, repeated enough times, leads to clarity. If you look at anyone who's built something worthwhile, A business, a relationship, a skill. They didn't wait for perfect clarity. They started messy. They began when it felt uncertain. They figured it out as they went. That's not the exception. That's the rule. The difference is they trusted the process. They trusted themselves to make it up as they went along. And guess what? You can do the same. The irony is, the longer you wait for clarity before you act, the more confused you get. The more you think, the more angles appear. The more options you see, the harder it is to choose. And so the loop continues. It's only by moving that the noise dies down and the path sharpens. If you want clarity, you have to earn it. Not with more thought, but with more courage. With the willingness to try, to fail, to observe, and to grow. Because clarity isn't about knowing everything before you begin. It's about beginning anyway, and discovering what you need to know along the way. Success doesn't come from perfection. It comes from momentum, from motion, from bold decisions made quickly and adjusted later. The idea that you need to get everything exactly right before moving forward is one of the biggest lies holding people back. The truth is, the people who win in life, in business, in relationships, they are not the ones who are always right. They're the ones who keep moving. They're the ones who trust themselves to handle whatever happens next. Most people get stuck in the waiting room of life, obsessing over the right time, the right way, the right answer. But perfection is a moving target. The longer you chase it, the more it slips away. That obsession with getting it perfect actually stops you from ever getting started. And without starting, you're guaranteed to lose. You don't need perfection. You need decisiveness. Make a call. Pull the trigger. Move, because the speed of your decisions often matters more than their accuracy. Why? Because speed creates progress, and progress creates feedback, and feedback gives you better data to improve. Meanwhile, the person who sat still, trying to be flawless, has learned nothing and gone nowhere. This is what separates the high performers from the overthinkers. High performers aren't reckless. They're fast. They gather enough information to make an intelligent call. Then they move. They don't sit around asking, what if it goes wrong? They ask, what do I do next if it does? That's a huge difference. One is fear. The other is leadership. You can't steer a parked car. If you want to get somewhere, you have to turn the key, shift into gear, and go. Even if your direction isn't perfect, movement gives you the chance to adjust. But if you wait until the road is perfectly clear, you'll never leave the driveway. Life is dynamic. It rewards the bold, the adaptive, and the fast, not the hesitant perfectionist. Think about the most successful entrepreneurs, athletes, or creatives. They move fast, they launch before they're ready, they speak before their message is polished, they create before their plan is airtight, and you know what happens. They learn, they adjust, they improve. And most importantly, they build momentum. Momentum is a force multiplier. Once you're in motion, it becomes easier to stay in motion. Opportunities start showing up. Confidence starts building. Doors start opening. But none of that happens if you're still stuck on step one, trying to make it perfect. Making fast decisions doesn't mean being impulsive. It means being committed. It means understanding that you'll never have 100% of the information, but you almost always have enough to make a move. And if that move is wrong, great, now you know. Now you're smarter. Now you're in a position to make a better move. That's how progress is made. In real time, not theoretical time. The fear of failure keeps a lot of people frozen. But failure isn't the enemy. Stagnation is. You can recover from a bad decision. You can't recover from never deciding. You can make adjustments to a path that started in the wrong direction, but you can't improve a plan that never left your head. The idea of decide fast, fix later is about trusting your ability to adapt. It's about saying, I don't need every answer, I just need to start. Because starting gives you leverage, it gives you an edge. It takes you from passive to active, from waiting to creating. Every minute you delay a decision, you're losing more than just time. You're losing energy, you're losing focus, you're losing confidence. The longer something hangs over your head, the heavier it becomes. But once the decision is made, the weight lifts. You're free to move, to execute, to grow. Fast decisions don't guarantee success, but they guarantee progress. And progress is what keeps you in the game. You'll never out. Plan someone who's already in motion. So stop obsessing over the perfect move. There is no perfect move. There's only movement. Make the call. Trust yourself. You can't think your way into success. You have to move your way there, one fast decision at a time. Your mind is like a browser with dozens of tabs open. Each one represents something you're worrying about, trying to decide on, or haven't finished. A conversation you need to have, an email you haven't replied to, a goal you haven't started, a mistake you keep replaying. The longer those mental tabs stay open, the slower your focus runs. Just like a computer, you begin to lag. Your performance drops, your mental clarity fades, and what happens? You feel overwhelmed, scattered, and mentally exhausted. Without having done anything meaningful, we live in an age of constant input. Notifications, distractions, decisions, and obligations all fighting for your attention. You're processing more information in a day than most people did in a week a generation ago. And in the midst of all that noise, you're expected to function, perform, achieve, and stay calm. That's not going to happen unless you take control of your mental bandwidth. And it starts with this. Close the tabs, reduce the mental clutter, focus on the next step, and only the next step. You don't need to solve everything at once. You don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to take the next step. One action, one decision, one move. That's where progress lives. Trying to hold everything in your head at once creates stress. Stress creates hesitation. Hesitation turns into inaction, and that's how people get stuck. Not because they're lazy or unmotivated, but because they've let too many unresolved thoughts compete for attention at the same time. Simplifying isn't about doing less. It's about focusing more. It's about choosing what matters now and giving it your full attention. The brain is not built for multitasking, at least not in the way we think. It's built to process one meaningful task at a time. When you try to spread that attention across 10 different tasks, none of them get done well. You bounce around half, complete one thing, jump to another, and end the day wondering why you feel exhausted and unproductive. The most productive people in the world have mastered the art of simplification. Not because their lives are less complex, but because they focus with precision. They don't let everything in. They don't keep mental tabs open forever. They handle what matters and they close it. That frees up mental energy, that creates space, and in that space, clarity, creativity, and calm can actually exist. Start noticing the open tabs in your mind. What are you holding on to that you haven't acted on? What decisions are you avoiding? What unfinished tasks are draining your attention in the background? Write them down, choose one, then act on it. It could be sending the message, making the call, saying yes, saying no. Whatever it is, deal with it, and then move on. That single move will give you more clarity than an hour of thinking ever will. Action closes tabs, avoidance keeps them open, and every open tab costs you attention. That's the price of indecision. It doesn't seem like much in the moment, but it adds up fast. A delayed choice here, a postponed task there, and suddenly your brain is spinning with unresolved tension. You feel tired not from doing too much, but from carrying too many undones. This is why it's not just about managing your time, but managing your attention. Time doesn't matter if your focus is scattered. You can have a full day blocked out for a project, but if your mind is cluttered with unresolved tasks, you won't make meaningful progress. Attention is the real currency of high performance. And the best way to protect your attention is to close the tabs and focus on the next thing in front of you. You don't need a better plan. You need a better habit. Deal with one thing at a time fully. Be ruthless about simplifying. When in doubt, ask yourself, what's the one thing I can do right now that moves me forward? Then do just that, nothing else. Trust that once that step is done, the next one will become clear. It's not complexity that creates breakthroughs, it's focus. It's showing up for one thing with full presence and finishing it, then moving to the next with a clear mind. Do that often enough, and your days stop feeling like a mess of chaos. They start to feel like a rhythm, a flow, not because you're doing less, but because you're finally focused, and in that focus, progress becomes natural. Confidence isn't something you're born with. It's not a personality trait reserved for the bold or extroverted. It's a skill, built, earned, and reinforced through action. You don't wake up one day feeling fearless. You become confident by doing the very things you're scared of. That's the irony. You wait to feel confident before you act. But confidence is the result of acting. Every time you take a step forward despite uncertainty, you send yourself a message: I can handle this. That's how self-trust is built. The biggest mistake people make is thinking they need to feel ready first. They want certainty. They want permission. They want the fear to disappear before they take the leap. But that moment never comes because fear doesn't go away with time. It goes away with motion. The only way to get over the fear of doing something is to actually do it. And once you do, something shifts. You realize the thing you were so afraid of wasn't as big as it felt in your head. You realize you survived, you learned, you grew, and next time it's a little easier. Confidence grows in the doing, in the trying, in the failing and getting back up. Every experience you stack, no matter how small, becomes part of your identity. That's what makes you feel more grounded. Not positive thinking, not affirmations, reps, repetitions of action that show you what you're capable of. You don't become a confident speaker by reading about communication. You become confident by standing in front of people and speaking. You don't become confident in business by watching YouTube tutorials. You build it by launching something, getting feedback, and improving. You don't become confident in your ability to lead by waiting for the perfect moment to step up. You build it by raising your hand when it's uncomfortable, making a call, owning the outcome. Action is the furnace that forges real confidence. The problem with waiting to feel confident is that it keeps you stuck in your head. You start measuring yourself against imaginary standards. You compare yourself to people who are already 10 steps ahead. And then you use that gap as proof that you're not ready. But what you're really seeing is the result of their reps. Not their natural ability, not some magical gift, just years of doing the thing you're afraid to start. The good news, you don't need years to start building momentum. You just need one action, one moment where you choose courage over comfort. That one decision shifts everything, because now you're not just sitting in thought. You're in the arena. You're playing the game, and the game is where growth happens. It's where you discover that yes, you can make mistakes and still move forward. Yes, you can get rejected and survive. Yes, you can mess up and still make progress. That's what builds real, durable confidence. Confidence also compounds. The more action you take, the more proof you collect. The more proof you collect, the more you trust yourself. And the more you trust yourself, the faster you move next time. It becomes a cycle, not a perfect one, not without setbacks, but a reinforcing loop of belief built on experience. The people who seem naturally confident, they've just failed more times than you. They've been in more uncomfortable situations and chosen action anyway. Avoiding action, on the other hand, chips away at your confidence. Every time you hesitate, every time you delay, every time you shrink from a challenge, you send the opposite message: I can't handle this. That message becomes internalized. It becomes part of your self-image. And the next time you face uncertainty, you're already defeated before you start. Not because you're not capable, but because you've taught yourself to doubt. So if you want more confidence, stop looking for it in books, in quotes, in external validation. Look for it in your own courage, in your willingness to take the next step, even when your hands shake, even when your voice wavers. Because confidence doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you don't let fear make the decisions for you. It means you act anyway, and through that action, you discover strength you didn't know you had. That's the formula. That's the work. You want to feel unstoppable, then start where you are, use what you have, and take a step. Then take another, show up again tomorrow, not for perfection, not for applause, but for you, because every step you take is a vote for the kind of person you're becoming, and that person, they're already more confident than you realize. One of the biggest mistakes we make is trying to solve everything in our heads. We think if we just analyze a little more, think a little longer, weigh a few more pros and cons, we'll arrive at a moment of clarity where all the pieces fall into place. That moment rarely comes, and the longer we try to force it, the more stuck we become. What we don't realize is that our brains were never meant to carry everything at once. That mental traffic jam you feel, it's not because you're not smart or capable. It's because you're overloading your internal system and refusing to offload. When your thoughts live only in your mind, they multiply. A small concern turns into a big one. A minor task starts to feel overwhelming. Ideas swirl and tangle until they feel impossible to act on. You lose track of priorities. You replay conversations. You anticipate worst-case scenarios, and suddenly you're not thinking, you're spiraling. That's why you need to clear mental space, and one of the most effective tools to do that, writing. Writing is how you unburden your mind. It's not about crafting beautiful prose. It's about externalizing your thoughts so you can see them clearly. Once they are on paper or a screen, they lose their grip on you. You can now organize them, challenge them, or act on them. But until then, they remain in a swirling loop, taking up bandwidth and creating emotional friction. This is not a motivational trick. It's practical neurological strategy. Your brain is brilliant at processing, creating, adapting, but it's not designed to be a long-term storage unit. It's like a whiteboard, not a warehouse. When too many ideas, fears, and to-dos live in your mental whiteboard at once, clarity disappears. You start to feel anxious, foggy, indecisive, not because the tasks are too big, but because there are too many of them trying to live in the same space. By writing things down, thoughts, worries, tasks, decisions, you create separation. That separation creates perspective. Perspective allows you to respond instead of react. For example, when a worry is stuck in your head, it feels endless. But when you write it down, you can question it. You can ask, is this really true? Is this helpful? Is there something I can do about it? Now you've turned vague fear into actionable thought. Writing also helps prioritize. When everything feels equally urgent in your mind, you can't focus. But once you list things out, patterns appear. You see what matters now, what can wait, what isn't even yours to carry. You regain control, not because life got simpler, but because your thinking did. This is why journaling, brain dumps, or even a simple list can be transformative. You wake up in the middle of the night thinking about something, write it down. You're stuck trying to decide between two options. Write out the pros and cons. You're overwhelmed with everything you need to do. Make a list. It's not the act of writing that's magic. It's the clarity it creates. Clarity breeds calm, and when your mind is calm, you make better decisions. You stop reacting from panic and start responding from power. You don't need to meditate for hours or disappear into the mountains to find peace. You just need to create enough mental space to think clearly. And that starts with putting things out of your head and onto something you can see. Some of the highest performers in the world, from CEO to athletes to artists, have one thing in common: they write. Not to be writers, but to think better, to see patterns, to get ahead of their thoughts instead of being dragged behind them. Writing becomes a thinking partner, a second brain, a mirror for the cluttered mind. This practice is even more essential when life feels chaotic. When things are moving fast and emotions are high, your thoughts will try to hijack you. If you don't direct them, they'll direct you. If you don't slow them down, they'll run the show. But writing slows the pace. It allows you to pause, observe, and act with intention. So when you feel overwhelmed, anxious, or unclear, don't try to figure it all out in your head. Pull it out, write it down. Free up that mental RAM. You don't need to solve everything at once. You just need to clear enough space to see the next move. That's how you calm the noise. That's how you move forward. That's how you take back your focus and your power. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching my video. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe my YouTube channel. If you want more video, thank you for giving us time. Make sure that you live your life properly.